Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and a very good day to all of you, my dear students. I hope that you are doing well. If we just talk about what we are covering in the previous lectures, now we have started to focus more on the different forms of writing, in which, if I talk about the previous lecture that we have just finished, our focus was on the format and the structure of a memorandum, and we talked about it in detail. Format refers to the outer frame in which you have to simply prepare a memorandum, and in how many parts a memorandum is basically divided is something that you study in the structure of a memorandum. With that, we came to the end alongside some examples that we studied, and coming towards our today's lecture, our focus would be on the email writing, that we also consider as the electronic correspondence. It's not a term that would be so new or unusual for you, because the reason behind is that wherever you go, you are conversing with some individual, and especially I'm talking about our today's context. This is considered to be the age of information technology, in which everything is happening alongside internet. We are using technology, we are using gadgets, and it's all happening because of the advent of internet. With that internet, we started to hear this term of email. This concept, if I am not wrong, started and was quite new, of email address, email ID and communication back in 90s. These things were quite new. And wherever you would go, there would be one or two individuals asking for your email address. Just give us your email, we're going to email it to you. The information will be sent in the form of the email. So at times you would be considering that what this email is when you heard this term for the very first time. But now gradually things have started to become more disseminated among everyone with this social media and talking about our today's context, so everyone knows, and this makes it an important subject, an important topic to be covered, to give you the basic etiquettes, the manner and the ethics of email writing, first starting of course from what basically it is, what it refers to, the background, and then moving towards the purpose it achieves, the manner in which it achieves. So we're going to be talking about everything in a very good detail, so that once these lectures are complete, you turn out to be a good writer of an email. Of course, that is an important mode of communication which is being used by you and your moderators. In your case, of course, you already have an email, but of course, if you want to make your own email, that will be something which would be taught to you as well. So you may have all the skills required to use an email address efficiently. So let's start with our today's lecture, and starting of course from what basically email writing refers to. So a communication taking place in an electronic means. Giving you the explanation, the correspondence taking place through the internet, that we call of course as the information superhighway, or GIS, the Global Information System. Well, it has taken the whole planet and turned it into a global village. As a result of this internet, we can simply within few minutes go to any nook and corner of the world. Whatever we want to see, whatever we want to view, that has become possible as a result of the internet. And this is basically step one, that we have the access of different points, different places, different sites, and in addition to this, this email or the electronic correspondence, the electronic version of a mail has made it possible to even interact in real time with all the persons, all the individuals who are there in different parts of the world. I call it real time because it has simply bridged the gap. Otherwise, it used to take even days and months to deliver a post, send it, then being received, then being read, and then being responded by the other person who is at a very far-fetched area. So that's why I call it that it's a communication which has gradually transformed that communication or an interaction which was taking a lot of time. Now it just simply takes few minutes. To talk about a definition which is provided by dictionary.com, we can simply say that it's a system of sending messages from one individual to another person, group, via telecom links between computers. Of course, you have these telecommunication networks, and through these links you are able to interact person to person or person to a group of individual using a dedicated software. So of course there is a software behind this whole process, and we're gradually going to discuss it as well when we move ahead to all those steps through which you can develop your own email address and then how you use it. So now, as we have the definition, we can now look at these words. What do they refer to? E, if we talk about this, the letter E within email refers to electronic, and mail refers to a form of letter. So we can consider it to be a form of letter that is electronic in nature, digitized. And of course we can call it to be the most used and popular service on the internet, because internet of course has become the source of giving you the access of different parts of the world, but that is just one step in which you can just view everything. But of course, to make it like a real experience, the other step is that you can really interact with all those persons that you see, all those groups, be it an office or an organization or a market or some institute, but you're able to interact with those students, with your professors. That is basically something for which you require and you utilize an electronic version of letter or mail. It basically enables messages to be transferred from an individual to another individual, or from an individual to a group of people which are considered to be the receivers. So now you have a channel as well, a channel of communication through which this content, whatsoever it is being transferred from a sender towards the receiver. So you have a channel, and the receiver either could be a single individual, or it can be a group of individuals who can be addressed directly, or there can be some other modes of addressing your group of individuals by placing them in different sections, as we are going to see when the real process of email writing begins. Then, in addition to this interaction taking place through electronic mail or an email, you also have this ability, this space of sending some additional material in the form of an attachment. You can attach an audio, you can attach a video, or you can also go for attaching some pictures that you consider relevant with the ongoing communication. So that's how this becomes important as well, and this is made possible by an electronic version of mail. Based on the objectives that you try to achieve by writing an email or composing an email and then sending it to the direct addressee or the receivers, you basically categorize these emails into a self-fulfilling email in which the focus, your major target is basically the provision of an information, or it can be a compliment that you are providing to an individual, meaning that in this case of self-fulfilling email, self-explanatory email, there is no reply which is necessary to be coming from the opposite end. You sending the information is all that matters. The story is up. But however, based on the objectives, of course, you have these inquiry email as well, in which of course you advise or you ask for some advice. Moving onwards, you raise a question and you require an answer from your audience. So basically in this case we can say reply is the desired outcome in case of such form of an email. Then to some extent there are situations in which you develop an email which has the form of an open-ended dialogue. Of course, keeping communication lines open for improved future results. Of course, the interlocutors need to have the expertise with respect to the subject area they are dealing with. In case of the kind of audience that we have studied, we are talking about lay audience. Of course, they will get confused with this form of email in which you are taking them to an open-ended dialogue. If they are the experts, certainly they can reach a consensus. They'll be unanimous at a decision after that talk or that communication which is happening in the form of an email, by making it an open-ended dialogue. Of course, it will continue till a consensus is reached. And once again, you have another form of an email known as the action email. Of course, it demands an action on the part of the receiver, which is basically getting all the directions. So you provide the directions and you ask that person who is receiving that email to perform an action, and based on this objective you basically call it as an action email. So hopefully you got the idea that based on the objectives you can categorize your emails as well, and you need to determine which form of email or which category has to be used based on the objectives that you have, and once again keeping in view the nature of the audience or how to deal with that audience based on their knowledge, their expertise and their background experience. Now, talking about the advantages, of course, as I gave you an earlier comparison, when there was no concept of electronic version of a mail, of course, postal services was the only option left, and it used to take even days, weeks, even months, depending upon the distance which had to be covered for sending the information, if it really is that important. But of course, now things have become digital, and due to this digital nature, we can say that now information can be sent to anyone and anywhere. Of course, the second advantage that you get is, even if I have to send just a few documents through courier service or even using the postal service, so I am charged. But in case of your electronic email, no matter how many emails you are sending, you're not being charged compared with the charges that you have in case of a postal letter or anything which you have to send. It's weighed, and based on the weight it's decided how much you will be charged. Over here, no matter how many things you are attaching, no matter how many documents you are sending, it will be quick as well as cost effective. And why calling it convenient? Because as you are being comfortable while studying these lectures. Why? Because they have this online mode of communication, which even if you are sitting at your home or even there in a computer lab, so whatever the place is, I am here to give you the lecture. You are in a position to just simply take a pause whenever you feel like you need a break, and once again you can take a start. It's the same convenience that you have here in case of an email writing. So things are there in the palm of your hand, if it's a laptop, if it's a tablet, if it's a smartphone, or even if it's a desktop, it's there in front of you in your room, at your home. You can simply write it and then send it to any place, to anyone at any time. Well, this is the advantage that should be considered while comparing this version with the letter that we have in different other scenarios. Some of the important assumptions which should be there within your mind. You need to assume and you need to clarify yourself, and you need to make sure that these objectives are achieved when you are composing and when you are writing an email. Of course, what should be our goal? Our goal is to construct email that will actually be read, will actually be understood, will not annoy the receiver, and does not take up too much time on the receiver's end. Now, these are very important points, and this basically demands a careful exercise, the practice and learning of those strategies through which you can develop an effective email rather than developing a bad impression in the mind of your receiver. Therefore, something which will be read should be something which is legible and very much clear and to the point. Because if you are coming up with details and unnecessary details, now this can create a lot of confusion and of course a bad impression in the mind of your receiver. Of course, if you are providing it with clarity, with reference to of course the 7 C's of communication, it will actually be understood as well. And of course, maintaining, considering and giving this courtesy to your audience, of course, you will not annoy the receiver as well by of course highlighting their incentive, their benefits, and of course does not take up too much time on the part of receiver's end, means that you are keeping it concise as well. Complete, concise, concrete, clear, courtesy and consideration. You see, all these C's are working together once again while talking about constructing an effective email. So these are the assumptions which are to be fulfilled in case of a good, a positive and a very successful and effective email. And for that, of course, the understanding of a receiver is very much important before moving on to writing something to him or her. The receiver is very much important, and considering his or her nature should be the primary goal while composing and while preparing an email. There are few points about which you should be very much clear before writing the email. If I look and if I give you the first point regarding the receiver, it's that your receiver may or may not be getting a lot of emails. Now this thing has to be clarified before writing your email to that concerned person. If this thing is clear, then of course you can decide whether to keep your language short, or you can of course provide some explanation. Of course, if the case is that maybe getting a lot of emails, then of course if you are keeping your content short, there will be a better chance that the other person is going to give it a reading. However, if the case is vice versa, of course may not be getting a lot of emails, that means that person is going to have even more time to give some consideration to what you have written in detail, and therefore you have the space of providing some additional information as well, but it all will be determined based on your understanding of the receiver with respect to point number 1. If I take you towards the other consideration, it's regarding whether your receiver is receiving the regular set of standard questions, or is it something that is new every time he or she is getting some information. For example, if he has to provide or if she has to provide some weekly report, then of course your information could be very much straight regarding I require that weekly report regarding the performance of employees or their weekly activities, what they have been doing, because that is basically the task which has to be inquired from that person, or which has to be completed by that person. However, if that is a person who is a researcher, or if that is a person who is performing multiple things, multiple tasks, so your email could have any subject and the other person is going to give careful attention to the information which is coming towards his or her end. Otherwise, if his or her task is just focused on providing the weekly report, there is a less chance that the other person is going to read something other than the basic task which has to be performed or which has to be provided. Therefore, you have to consider this point as well, whether that person is getting some standard questions or standard set of emails, or he or she simply accepts every kind of subject. So this point is going to help you as well while drafting or while preparing an email. Then of course this is very much important, especially with reference to your professional environment, whether the other person has time for the email or not, because if there is time, if there is a good relation which exists between you and him or her, of course there will be careful consideration from his or her side towards the content which you are sending him or her. Whereas if that is a person not known to you and you are interacting with that person for the very first time, then you have to be very much careful how you are preparing, how you are drafting your email, how you are structuring it, how you are keeping important things at the top so that they may be the focal point and the other person is able to read the main point that you really want to highlight. And this point also becomes very much important, that whether the other person really is at the receiving end, whether he or she is really there to help us out in such a situation, or he really is a person who sticks to his own business. So this has to be kept in mind as well. Whether the person is there at the receiving end, then of course you will write an email in such form that you will be sure that this person is going to help me out in this task. Whereas if you know that the other person will not be at side at that corner, then of course you can find some other alternatives as well. So that's how these 4 points also become very much important and would help you of course to decide how to structure your email, or whether to go for an email or find another option to have this interaction. That's how this becomes important, and from this we can then move ahead. With this awareness in mind and asking these questions to yourself and getting all the answers which are required, then you need to keep in mind certain qualities, certain steps and certain characteristics which would help you to draft an effective email. And now we are going to look at them gradually and steadily, one by one, alongside their explanation, so that you may know how to apply them within your own email writing process. Determining your desired outcome. Of course, if you are well aware, if you are clear about the purpose, that purpose is going to determine how you want to proceed and how do you really want to initiate the writing process. If you are clear about the purpose, only then you would know how to achieve that purpose, and that will help you to clearly write what you want or what you wish your audience, what your readers to read or know. Therefore, first determine the desired outcome. The next step should be jumping towards the point. As I mentioned earlier, in case of your emails, we are going to look at certain other points which would help you clarify the idea or get the idea in a stronger way. But the point is, once again, within the professional environment in which you will be using email quite often, you are always short of time. There are many things to do. Therefore, if you have the command and skill of keeping to the point, that will help you always whenever you are writing an email, whether to your higher authorities, whether to the people who are like your colleagues, fellow colleagues, working at the same level, or even to your subordinates. But you will know how to stick to the point, and you will simply raise that point, you will jump towards it, and that will help you achieve the desired results. For the explanation, I would say that you can simply jump to the point by using as few words as possible. Then, of course, introducing who you are. Of course, this introduction becomes important, especially when you are interacting with a person that you don't know. But in case of a scenario in which you being the boss and interacting with all the subordinates, everyone would know who you are, then this introduction is not needed. But in a generic sense, that is how you jump to the point with a brief introduction and setting up a context if it really is necessary for the comprehension of the upcoming information. And then you basically provide the purpose, that why you are emailing. Purpose not only will help you to determine the desired outcome, but would also help your readers to understand the email in a better way. That's how this becomes important, and you should be clear about it. Then another quality of an effective email is that it simply states the incentives and benefits of receivers rather than the sender. Of course, you being the sender and you want the reader to read the information, why would the reader read your information? What's so special about it, or what would the reader get out of it, are some of the questions which are there within the mind of your reader. And if you keep those questions in mind and then want to write an email, the first thing which would come within your mind will of course be to provide or to mention some incentives and benefits which the readers would get out of reading your content. That's how this becomes important, and a good email should clearly state these incentives and benefits. This also becomes very much important. We call it like a KISS approach, keeping it simple, or calling it keeping it so simple that the other person is very much easy to grasp the basic idea, what is there within the email. That's why you need to keep things very much simple. And simplicity basically comes by some good practice, by some good awareness of all the different parts which are there within an email. I'm sure many of you would be saying, we have been writing email, we have this knowledge regarding the email, but there are many of you who may be missing certain important points which are basic parts of an email. Even I myself, while going through this content development and while teaching so many students, I have also learned many things, minor things which can really make a difference. These minor errors can have a negative impact, but if you put these things in the sequence in which they should be, in the manner they should be used, then of course you can be considered as a good writer of an email, and it would of course help you in your professional life. So keep following and you will be learning many things along with me. Then of course, in addition to this jumping to the main point, you can of course jump and highlight the basic point, but alongside you need to stick to the facts, because this fact finding and description of these facts is going to keep the interest of your readers alive. They would say everything is authentic, credible and reliable. That's why as the new information is being provided after every paragraph or after every sentence. Therefore, this becomes interesting. Rather, if you are just building castles in the air, that won't be that much interesting compared with you are keeping yourself towards factual information. This is the significance of factual information, which has been highlighted within the previous lectures, and once again it becomes important with special reference to email writing. Moving ahead, this is also very much important, this pretending of first face-to-face communication. Of course, you're writing an email to a person, you don't know how they look, you don't know about their even nature. Because even if I talk about my own experience applying for different conferences, different workshops, so there is always an email of the concerned focal person. So I don't have any idea what's their nature, what are their expectations. You don't have much knowledge about it. Therefore, you need to pretend and you need to imagine few things as well, that if you are about to have this first one-on-one face-to-face conversation with that concerned person, and now you want to highlight this fact, showing your interest that you want to participate in that workshop, seminar, or a conference, or any other place where you really are interested to go and want to interact using the email. Imagine that situation in which that person is there in front of you and you are interacting face to face. Then how are you going to take a start? This thing within your mind will help you to structure your email in a better way, because you'll have an idea, this person is new to me and looking at me, how am I going to introduce myself for the very first time? If there is a person new to you and standing there in front of you, how will you introduce yourself to have a good impression? This is the way you should proceed and write your email to a person or to an individual whose email is totally new for you. Pretending you are using a mobile device, a tablet, even I can call as a laptop for communication. But why mobile device or tab? The reason being, as you would have seen, and you may be using as well, these mobile phones have become quite common. But of course they are small. They were smaller in the beginning, but now with the passage of time, with technology, they are becoming a bit larger as well. Of course, to facilitate you on one end. But the other thing to be kept in mind is that still, nevertheless, they have a shorter size. And most of the professionals, especially the higher authorities, they just use this phone. They're there in the palm of their hand, they're checking their emails, and they're traveling, they're moving, they're attending their meetings, performing their task. But within their palm, they're looking at your emails as well. So this imagination within your mind of the fact that your immediate receiver of communication would be checking that email in a mobile phone or even a tablet, therefore he won't be giving that much time to it, as so many other emails would be there that he or she has to check. Therefore, if it's written in short, to the point, very much clear, highlighting the main point with some facts and figures, then he would simply look at it and say this one is important. And if it becomes important, of course they can click and look into the details as well. So keep that context in mind. Imagine that the other person has this phone in the hand and now looking at your email which has just come into the inbox. So if it's short, it will be read, and if it's clear, it will be read as well, and it's going to make a difference. Some other good qualities in case of the effective email writing is the addition of some friendly comments. Of course, the friendly comments become important to bridge the gap which exists because of this distance between two persons interacting, maybe in different two countries. But by the use of these good friendly comments, you're trying to bridge the gap, developing a good relationship, a working relationship, a professional relationship. But these good friendly comments are used once again going in line with the C of courtesy and consideration. You're considering your audience and you're giving them respect by coming up with these friendly comments, and that's how This becomes important and is a quality of good and effective email. Being authentic and realistic with conversational English. An English which really exists in the form of a conversation, because there are situations in which you come up with the technical terms, but the extensive use of these technical terms will not develop that link, that relationship which you can develop by interacting in a conversational English, because this conversation is a quality which is existing there in a professional environment, between colleagues, between classmates, even within your family, within your neighborhood. You meet anyone, you basically have this conversation. You do not talk like a robot. This mechanic English in which just terms are coming or abbreviations are being used, or just staying at just limited use of the conversational, in which you are basically trying to interact and just, keeping things quite machine-like. Well, that is something which has to be avoided. Rather, of course, in addition to being authentic and realistic, you try to make your interaction and communication more conversational in nature, in which both the parties get involved within the meaning making process. And this is the important aspect, this is the important part of an effective email as well. In addition to this, I would say your font size and style also makes a difference. As I was going through some videos, and just to have a better idea, it was recommended by one individual to go for Arial. I believe the focus should be on how clear your email is for the other person to read, because there are different situations in which they would be reading. Of course, as I mentioned, it can be a phone, it can be a tablet, it can be a laptop. So just try to focus on that font style which can be read. You can even test it as well, whether it is legible, it can be read in case of a phone or not, by sending an email to yourself, of course, and then opening up in a phone or a tablet or even in a laptop, just to check whether there is uniformity. And in addition to this, your font size can go up and down as well. This up and down is used for, highlighting something, emphasizing on certain points, and of course organizing your email as well. You can use this division into sections as well, and for that, of course, this change of font size becomes important to categorize things and sections into different parts. The formatting also is going in line with this font size. Formatting matters, of course, the use of these bullet, division into list, and then the use of short paragraphs, making things bold and in italic to highlight them. Of course, whenever we have to mention some due date or deadline, you're going to see as well, when you are talking, when you are conversing, when you are receiving some emails from your moderators, from your teachers, your dates are made bold, some other information, some name of a book is made italic. So that is how the use of these bullet, list, short paragraphs and making things bold and italic becomes important, because these are used to make it more convenient for your readers to understand, and it has to be used and being quality of an effective email. Then the important point is minimizing your questions. If there really is a question that you really want to ask, of course, we have talked about the different forms of email based on the objectives. Over there, I mentioned that if you are asking for a reply from the other person, of course, you need to raise a question. But a good rule of thumb and a good convention is not to exceed this number from 2. Good is, of course, raising a single question, because if a person is reading an email and if there is one question being raised, that will be remembered. But if you just come up with a list of questions, even if I just tell you verbally certain questions, If I ask one question, you would be able to remember it. But if I am asking a list of questions, let's say 5, you will remember 2. If I am giving you 10 questions, you may remember 4, 3 or 4. That is basically the difference, which is why my recommendation to you, and as per convention, keep yourself to a single question or not more than 2. Of course, if needed, ask specific close-ended questions rather than confusing questions. Why? Because the point is you are trying to interact with the other person in a conversational tone. Therefore, it's better to focus on the provision of information, responding to a query. But even if you have to ask a question, then it has to be a close-ended question. Because in case of an open-ended question, as I mentioned earlier, open-ended questions can create a lot of confusion unless there are some people who have the expertise of resolving a query. Otherwise, it will be very much confusing, and in such a scenario, in such situation, of course, the close-ended questions is a better option and should be applied while drafting your email. One exercise which shouldn't be forgotten, which shouldn't be overlooked, is rephrasing, trimming your sentences to avoid unnecessary details. Of course, when you can say some point within 2 or 3 words, why to use 7 words? Why making your sentences long when you can simply rephrase them with something which is short and point blank? Because this is the point, this is the quality of conciseness, concreteness. You keep things concrete and you try to keep yourself concise as well. That is how this trimming of sentences becomes important and is an essential part before clicking the button of send so that it may be delivered to the actual receiver. First, check it, cross-check it, trim it, and then send it so that it may be free from all errors. Now, with this basic awareness in mind, we are moving towards the process and moving towards the stage in which we're going to look at what do we actually need for sending and receiving an email, and make sure everything is checked back at your end as well. Computer, laptop, tablet, smartphone, everything will go, because now talking about these modern smartphones, you have this option of sending an email with convenience without any issue. So these things have to be ensured, number 1. Number 2 is a stable internet connection. It shouldn't be the one in which you are having issues, problem, getting disconnected or low speed, because that can create a bit problem for you in the long run. Otherwise, after a couple of minutes or after this gap, of course the email will be sent, but that quality of being real-time communication, it will be lost. Therefore, you require a stable internet connection to see how it works. The third important thing through which you enter into the world of electronic correspondence is an email address managed by respective organizations and systems. Like in your case, I can say you have been provided with this electronic correspondence, means with your moderators you have their emails, you have your own emails as well. Of course, there are situations in which you are provided, once you start working in an organization, email addresses as well. These are the official email addresses. They have their own specific domain of that office, of that organization in which you are working. So that is how email address becomes important, because this email address reflects the identity that you have in this world of internet, this world of global information system, the information superhighway that I've been talking about. So this is your identity, this email address. Consider it to be your electronic personality, and it will be reflected by the manner you write your email. And therefore, just the way you want yourself to be presentable by putting on some good clothes, with some good communication skills that you develop, in a similar way you need to be careful how you reflect your electronic personality by that good choice of words that you are making and that organization of that information that you are providing in that email. So that will be your electronic personality. And due to the same reason, we're going to look at the format and structure once again, just to show you how your electronic personality can be made better. Starting from this awareness of the popular email service providers, many of you would have these on their fingertips, but of course, to have an idea, we are well aware of the fact that most of you, even I myself, have my email accounts in Gmail, Hotmail, Yahoo, and in addition, Juno and Excite are also used email service providers. But this one being more common, of course, we have accounts over here, but for reference, for explanation, we will be talking about the manner in which Gmail is used for the electronic correspondence. If you were a new individual interested to make your own email address based on all the talk that we had, the significance of email in the upcoming future and the ongoing time, the present time, so of course what you simply have to do is opening up your internet and going towards writing in the web address bar gmail.com. you will be directed towards creating your account. If you already have a username, password, so of course you can just log in to open up your account. Otherwise, what you need to do is, there is always an option of signing up. You need to sign up to develop your own account, and that sign up will take you directly towards this page over here, where you will be required to add your information, your name, and then this one also is very much important. This username will be part of your email address and has to be selected, has to be developed in a professional way, because you are preparing yourself for professional communication. Therefore, it needs to be an email address which can be considered as professional, because I can give you the examples. Even back in my own early ages, I used to talk to my brother and say, I need an email address and I want to call myself Shining Blue-Eyed Dragon at hotmail.com. So and he used to smile at me as well. Okay, I'll make one for you, because I didn't know at that time how to make an email. But once again, he smiling and I being at my teen or even younger. Point is that this is something childish and not to be expected from a professional, a working professional in an organization. Therefore, what you require is a reflection of yourself. As I said earlier, you need to develop this electronic personality within this world of internet. Therefore, it should have the same name that you have in this social world. So use your own name for your username. Of course, there may be a problem that you may face, that another user has a similar name, because of which you can't be provided the same name. Of course, you need to have a separate identity. Well, in such scenario, Gmail provides you with some alternative names. Of course, your name is there, but in addition to this, your name is coming adjacent to some numbers, 100, 2000. Gmail is going to make a combination of some numbers which would be coming alongside you. Of course, you can use that one, or you can bring a bit of change within your own username. For example, placing a dot between your first name and surname, placing an underscore between your first name and surname. So there are multiple options, But that is how you need to be very much careful while picking up your username, because whenever any individual is going to receive your email, the first thing that he or she is going to see would be your name. And in case some blue eye shining dragon or beauty is written beauty@yahoo.com, so they'll simply say, most probably there is a chance it seems like a spam to me, put it in trash. So to avoid it, if it's written over there anmolahmed@gmail.com, anmol_ahmed@gmail.com, if there is some correspondence, already existing correspondence, they will know that's the one. He has talked with me earlier. Okay, otherwise, okay, this seems like a name to me. Let's see what he's got. That what a username can do in case of your electronic correspondence. Then of course, you picking up a secure password for yourself. It could be something that you can remember. Don't go for such a strong password that you simply forget it yourself. Remember to use a password that you are familiar with some confirmation and some additional information. Adding up your number, you'll have your account develop. You can say now you have entered into the world of Gmail. Then of course you'll be asked to write your email, and once you click on this next, you will be taken to the next page where you will be asked to provide that password which you have chosen, and that will take you of course to the mainframe. So just to give you a quick overview and review of the points which we have discussed regarding the email address making process. Of course you sign up, and within this sign up you basically add some personal information, number, address, of course used for verification, and then comes the important part, which is of selecting an appropriate username and password, because that is going to make a difference. Over here we have a good example, wajid.malik@gmail.com and tayyiba_asgar@yahoo.com. You look at the name, simply look at them, so professional. Even still not looking professional, I have another set for you, handsome89@gmail.com. Who is this handsome? I have no idea. And talking about Pakistani312@hotmail.com, we all are, I guess, getting confused. Who is the person behind this Pakistan? So that is the confusion which can happen, and this is the bad impression which develops within the mind once they look at such a name. Therefore, to avoid it and to go for the first choice that is recommended for you. Now we have entered into the mainframe. You logged in after of course entering your username and password. That is how you get your screen, your own profile visible. These are some of your friends which you add gradually with the passage of time. These are all the emails that you are getting from the individuals, their names coming, and their subjects along with details are appearing over here. This is basically your email sending box where you decide to whom I should write and what should be the subject and how to write it. For this you have separate sections. You can see this division. This division is dividing this box of email into separate parts, and each part has its significance, and that's why these are separate. Otherwise, if you had the liberty of writing at any space whatever you wanted, they wouldn't have divided it into sections. So therefore, mind it and be very much careful to write the exact content which is supposed to be written within the box in which you are writing, because they provide these spaces separately and keep them apart by these division into sections. Just a general idea of how your mainframe appears. Now you have logged in, you have seen your mainframe as well. The actual process is now beginning, that you are about to write an email and you have to write it to someone, and that someone is your audience. Now what are the different types of audience, or what could be the nature of your audience? Well, that is very diverse, as you can see over here. Multiple readers can be reading your email. Especially, I can say it in the sense that one person receiving your email has the liberty, if he considers it relevant, to forward it to the other receivers as well. So this one single email may have multiple readers and with multiple levels of knowledge. Could be your instructors, your supervisors, and your subordinates, including your families and friends. So everyone is there, and that's how this nature of the audience and its understanding becomes very much important. Now, once you are aware of this nature of the audience, based on this nature, there is a wide range of diverse topics which can be covered, which can be discussed, or which can be made part of an email. That's how this becomes important as well. This selection of a specific topic basically is determined by, of course, the nature of the audience. If it's a specific audience, then of course the topic has to be written in the same way that it becomes comprehensible for your readers to get it, and get it in a clear possible manner. We'll look into some examples as well to understand how to write your basic topic, how to select that topic, and how to determine it based on the nature of the audience. Talking about the awareness of the audience is complete once you know that who is going to be your audience and what topic you are about to cover based on their understanding. Next awareness is also very much important, and that is once again regarding how your electronic personality should appear, how it should be organized, and then how you communicate is the next step. But now looking at your presentation, well, your email in journal should have two parts, head and body. Yes, the way you have a head and body. And first of all, if anyone has to interact with you, they look at your head, because the communication would be coming, of course, from this area. Your typically one viewable screen is used in case of composing an email, and this is basically the visibility of a screen as well, with 60 to 70 characters per line. This is the visibility in case of a screen which is viewable, talking about an LED or even your laptop, and making it even small, talking about a smartphone. So this has to be kept in mind, that this is the basic structure, that is how your personality should appear, in the 60 to 70 characters per line are appearing within your email. Beyond these parameters, the reader will be scrolling. As you use your smartphone to scroll, you use your stylus as well to scroll, and in case of your laptops, you're using your cursor to move up and down within an email. So this is basically the outlook or the outer frame of your email. In case of the screen in which the email is appearing, 12 to 14 lines per screen. This is the space which your email will be provided for the very first impression that it is going to make in front of your readers. This is the space which is provided to you, in which you have to make a difference, and once you have a good impression, then of course the reader will be interested to look into the detail of what you have ahead. In journal, link it with this conversational English mode of communication. That's why I call it. You try to keep it informal, and informal means you are trying to make it more interactive, more conversational in nature, so that the reader is also involved in the meaning making process and may not get bored with the information, or may not simply just delete it or put it in trash. It had to be interactive, and this interaction is going to maintain your link with your reader. Again, the reason being provided to you, just remember the point that this conversational nature has to be there in case of this electronic communication, and this demands you to maintain a proper tone and respect, courtesy, and considering your audience determine how to write your email. Now, how to talk, how to communicate. Once you know how I have to present myself, now how to basically communicate and how to interact with your readers. Well, it had to be a proper structure. Just the way we have an introduction, a middle, and end of any talk or any communication, in a similar way, in case of an email, you need to have a proper head, greeting, email text, and a proper closing. And with this, you have an organized structure of an email starting from head to body. Now, this is basically the body of an email. I can turn it into an insect as well. Right now, this one is okay. Just imagine an insect which has these tentacles over here. This is the head, and this is basically the body. And of course, it is moving in this direction. Not the insect, the communication is basically moving in this direction. You basically start with the head, then you greet, then you email, and this email is basically referring to the main body text of that email, and then you close that information, and that is how communication is moving from top to bottom. Now, gradually discussing these different sections. Starting from the head, of course, your head should include the following. You call this head starting from the identification lines. This head, as your head is used for identification, in a similar way, the head of an email is also used for the identification. It's becoming even funny for me as well, the manner in which I have related it, the email, with an actual human body, and I have given it an electronic version. Just enjoy it, and hopefully it will help you remember the different concepts as well. So your head is used for identification, and in a similar way, the email's head should be used for the identification as well, as you have different identification lines starting from to whom it is being sent, who is getting the carbon copy, and who is getting the blind carbon copy. Now, these different sections have their own different purposes, which is why they exist. Now, let's look at them one by one, starting from your to. In your to section, or the part where it's written to and then a colon, you have to place the name of that person who is your direct addressee, from whom you demand an action or you require an answer, or who has asked for some information and you are directly addressing to that person. That is placed over here after this to. Then, if there are certain individuals from whom you do not require a response, but you want them to know the information which is happening between you and the other person who has been placed over here, you are going to place that person over here in CC, meaning he or she is getting just a carbon copy. He or she is just a member of this conversation, and he or she just needs to know the interaction which is taking place between two persons. One thing which is important here is that the person who is there in to can clearly see who is getting the carbon copy. So the person who is placed in carbon copy is visible to all the interlocutors of that email. This is important part. And why am I calling it important? By it's different from blind carbon copy, because the person who is placed after this one as not looking like B, so the person who is placed after this BCC is not visible to the persons who are in carbon copy, and not even visible to the person who is the receiver of that email. Only the person who is the sender of that email and the person who has actually placed that person in blind carbon copy knows that that person is there in BCC, and the person who is basically in getting the blind carbon copy can see everyone. but no one except the sender can see the person who is there in BCC. So that is the difference. Might be looking a bit confusing, but the point is, making it in a nutshell, the person who is there in carbon copy is visible to everyone, whereas the person in blind carbon copy is not visible to anyone except the person who is actually sending the email. So if there is a person to whom you want the information to be known, hiding his or her identity, you're going to use BCC, so that the other persons may not interact with that person, because he should not be contacted, rather you should be. He is just a person who should know that you have performed an action, that's why you have placed him in BCC. Rather than staying here, hopefully you are clear, we can move ahead and look at the header in detail. In addition to those identification lines, you have to provide a clear subject, and this header always contains a clear subject line. Very important part of the message, and you should always include a subject line. This subject is going to focus on the main point. It will tell you what basically your email is all about. Some folks sort their messages by subject, so it is rude to not include a subject. This is very important, because whenever you receive an email, the first glimpse that you see of the other person is the subject. In addition to the name, what basically is dealing with. The subject is interesting, would simply make the other person click on that email to see what are the details. Your subject line would indicate the purpose or content of the message, just the way I mentioned. If your purpose is clear within your mind, you have to clarify it for your readers as well, and therefore you need to place it over here in the subject line. Why am I calling it subject line as headline? Is because headline, if you just look at these headlines in newspapers, so what do? The manner in which they are written, they are attention catching. They are written in bold, they are larger in size, used with big font, they are written with big font size, so they are catching the attention, and secondly they are providing the gist of the information which is coming in detail. Your subject has to do the same, and for that it should be briefly introducing the topic of the email. Now look at these examples. If you are doing this hello or dear and the name of the person, that will be very much wrong. Rather, if you are mentioning that you are requesting a meeting or cancelling an order, this is the right thing to be done in case of the subject line. This is the point to be remembered. That is how you basically grab the attention and get to the point. For example, if just the single word of meeting is written in the subject, it would simply confuse you. What meeting, about what purpose, when and where. Rather, reminder of 10 a.m. meeting scheduled at 10:05 and then the year on past process. So you are getting about what, when, where, at what time, everything is there, and that is how you can write an appropriate subject. This is the basic difference. Some other good examples of good subject line being focused, clear and informative are as follows. I want you to just go through these, you'll get an idea. Invitation to a ABC conference, application for account manager, agenda for the meeting on Monday with time, party invitation for John, Sally and Martin, updates on the building plans, meeting schedule for October 15. Each and every subject is very much, that's why I've written, focused, clear and informative. FCI. Remember these things while writing your subject, and it would help you to write subject which is focused, clear and informative. What not to do in case of your subject line? Well, these are the things to be avoided. Keeping it blank, not allowed. Something has to be there, and something which is most important, which reflects everything regarding your email. Hello, how are you? Of course, is not a place to be written here in case of your subject. First line of the email message, the first line should come with the rest of the lines of an email, and for that a separate email box of the body has already been provided. Subject has a purpose, as mentioned earlier, should be providing the basic point of the email, what is it all about, and it has to be written in clear language. Therefore, first line of the email message is also not allowed. This is a big blunder which is performed by students quite often. I'm not saying all of you, but many students do. That's why I want to talk about it as well. Whole email is written in the subject line, which is strictly prohibited, which is totally wrong, absolutely incorrect. Even the teachers are encouraged to deduct marks for such situation, for such an interaction, because they are taught many times, quite often, that you are supposed to write email after the subject, but in the subject line just talk about the basic point, that what do you want to talk about. So therefore it's strictly prohibited, it's not right, it's ethically incorrect to simply write the whole email in the subject line. What are you going to write after the subject line? The whole box is there for you to provide details. That is the place where you need to write the body. And of course, try to avoid words such as help or 50% off, 20% off, a reminder or free. Rather, clear, focused, your focused, clear, informative FCI once again should be there within your mind while writing your subject. Then of course, once you have decided in the head that what is your subject, now is the time you are moving and you are starting your communication. And the first thing is your greetings. Again, keeping in view the C of courtesy and consideration. When you are giving respect, you are starting with salutation. That is going to develop this link that the other person is going to take interest in what you really have to offer. Few points to consider while providing or while writing these salutation. In case you are not sure about the gender or name, you have a solution that you can go for the designation. For example, if you are aware of the name, of course you can write dear Professor Madani, but if you are not sure, then of course you can talk about dear CEO and then the name of the company, dear Director, and then Comstar Institute of Information Technology, in case you don't know the name. Otherwise, of course, if you know the name, you can address them based on their level, their place, their designation. You should know the level of courtesy which has to be provided, and that is how they have to be greeted. If you are only sure about the addressee's gender and not their designation, then it's better to come up with these expressions such as dear sir, madam. And even there are situations in which you are not even sure of their gender, then you write sir/ma'am, because you don't know who is going to receive. Therefore, better to go for both. But if you are sure of the gender, then just focus on this. Some other example, that is how you need to structure, or then you start your greetings. You can of course go for dear, you can write hi, then with the name, simple hi also goes, then saying hello, hello to whom it may concern. So these are also possibilities, but of course if you know the name, name goes best. In case you don't know, then the designation. Then even that's not possible, then giving courtesy by sir and ma'am. And these are the last options if you are not aware. The discussion will continue with respect to the structure of an email, because so far we have talked about the manner in which you are going to initiate the talk within the body, starting from greeting. But what's coming ahead will be discussed in the upcoming lecture, in which we are going to see what are the rest of the sections that you need to keep in mind while drafting your email. But for now, basics of email, steps of effective email writing, and to a certain extent the structure of an email. So from my side, it's goodbye and assalamu alaikum till we see you in the next lecture. Thank you.